We have massive trade news shaking up the foundation of the NFL as Cleveland Browns superstar Myles Garrett has officially requested a trade from the team this offseason. With that news, rumors are circulating everywhere as to which team can trade for Myles Garrett this offseason, and the San Francisco 49ers are among potential suitors for Browns superstar Myles Garrett. So today we're answering if the Niners will in fact trade for Myles Garrett. Can they even afford to try to make the move to acquire Myles Garrett, and what would it take to land the Cleveland Browns superstar? Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave that review, and as we go through the show, tell me down below in the YouTube comments what you think should happen with Myles Garrett, and do you want the San Francisco 49ers to trade for the Cleveland Browns superstar? Let's start at the top, though, and let's talk about the trade request itself, because there's reports everywhere talking about this, whether it's Schefter, Rappaport, Pelissero, Jeremy Fowler. This is a legitimate trade request. This is not, I want a new contract. This is not, I want a new deal. This is simply just, I'm tired of playing for the Cleveland Browns. I'm tired of losing every year. I'm tired of having different quarterbacks every season. I'm tired of you paying for terrible quarterbacks like Deshaun Watson. I'm tired of simply losing all the time. I want to win elsewhere. Myles Garrett essentially said, trade me to a Super Bowl contender. And that right there, his quest to win a Super Bowl is really what connects him to the San Francisco 49ers, who I guess, had a bad year last year, 6-11, a lot of injuries. The hope is they can bounce back in 2025. And when you bring back Robert Saleh and you are probably going to bring back Dre Greenlaw, and you can hopefully get healthy next year, you added Myles Garrett to the fray, and oh my goodness, San Francisco's defense goes from a inconsistent group with really good potential to a really good group with elite potential that can separate them when it comes to deep playoff runs, or even hopefully winning a Super Bowl next season. For Myles Garrett himself, he's 29 years old. If you didn't know, he's one of the best pass rushers in football, coming off his 7th consecutive double-digit sack season. Only had less than 14 sacks once in his entire career, and he's played 8 seasons, so seven 14-plus sack seasons for Myles Garrett. He is now the top name on the trade market. He's a 6-time Pro Bowler, a 4-time All-Pro. He won the 2023 Defensive Player of the Year award and was even an MVP finalist, in the same season. Over his 8 years, he has 102.5 sacks. 102.5 sacks in 8 years. That is good for 8th on the all-time or the current active list. He's just under Von Miller, right behind Khalil Mack, guys who have played 10-plus years. Myles Garrett is right there in the category with them when it comes to getting to the quarterback. And it's funny because, when the news came out, my response was, the Packers are going to be involved. But then thinking about it, I was like, man, the Niners have been known to shake things up, to make big moves. The Trey Lance trade, to trying to get Dee Ford, to trading for Chase Young, primarily on defense. They have been looking for this star number 2 edge rusher opposite Nick Bosa again, going back to 2019, getting Dee Ford. That worked out for 1 year, but then didn't work out the following seasons due to his injuries. Then they kind of went with this edge rusher by committee group with Samson Ebukam and Charles Omenihu and Arden Key, and that really worked for a couple of years, but it wasn't enough to get over the hump. And then 2023, they go and they trade for Randy Gregory. That doesn't work for a couple weeks, and they go and get Chase Young, say, wow, we have the Ohio State Buckeye boys back, Bosa and Young, and that did work for a lot of time, but it really didn't pay off because they lost the Super Bowl. So they've been trying. They've been looking under every nook and cranny to find an edge rusher opposite Nick Bosa with varying degrees, albeit they haven't got the big one yet. They haven't got the elite guy opposite Bosa, nor have they gotten the big win they needed to with Bosa as an edge rusher. This team is looking to reestablish itself And if you look across the NFL, for all the teams that maybe didn't make the playoffs this year, they are the number one contender for Myles Garrett. If you point to any team that has had the same aggressive offseason trade style, the history of trades they've had, the Niners are like, wow, they are looking for that guy. They have a need here with Myles Garrett. And also, the history shows they're willing to make massive trades. Go back to before 2019 or just after it. Trade DeForest Buckner, get Javon Hargrave. Like, they are willing to make these risky, big play moves if they can get them closer to a Super Bowl. And again, some of those have worked, some of those haven't. But when you talk about a bona fide splash, where you know this guy's going to come in and perform and it's like a guaranteed home run, it's really hard to look across the NFL and point to many other guys like Myles Garrett. And then we talked earlier this offseason about Max Crosby. That seems to be off the table if it ever actually was on the table because Pete Carroll's there now in Las Vegas. They have some consistency at head coach in the front office where they didn't have before. Meanwhile, the Browns are a mess still. Like, the Browns are in no man's land. They're one of the worst teams in football. Seemingly going to try to draft a quarterback again. Myles Garrett does not want to be a part of a rebuild. He wants out. And all signals say he's willing to play under his current contract, doesn't want to raise, just simply wants to win and play for a really good team. And San Francisco fits the bill in that asking price, in what he's looking for and searching for on the trade market, which brings us to, what would it cost? Who would you have to trade? Does the financials fit for the Niners and the Cleveland Browns? But first, I want to ask you and tell you about SeatGeek, our sponsor for today's episode. If you want to go to a sporting event or a concert during this winter and springtime, don't forget to use promo code 49ersaccess, 49ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com to save yourself $20 off your first purchase. You can also, if you want to perform like the GOAT Jerry Rice yourself, then you gotta get yourself a can of GOAT Fuel. Whether an athlete or a normal person like myself, GOAT Fuel can bring the best out of all of us. And for those of you out there who want a healthy coffee alternative, click that link down below in the description and grab yourself a can of GOAT Fuel to feel like the greatest of all time. Okay, what will it take to acquire Myles Garrett? Now, when you hear a name or a player of Myles Garrett's stature, you think, 2 first-round draft picks. The asking price starts at 3 first-round draft picks. And usually I'd agree with you. And I think usually had the circumstances been different, that would be the asking price. However, that doesn't seem to be the case. And don't get me wrong, I think Myles Garrett is worth 4 first-round draft picks. I can see Cleveland saying, look, to even start a conversation, you got to bring the goods. We want a first-round draft pick, 2 first-round draft picks. But that doesn't seem to be the case. Now, this is according to The Athletic's Diana Rossini. She talked to a anonymous NFL GM, so we have no idea who this guy is. He could be a team trying to acquire Myles Garrett, hoping to drive down his asking price, but this GM says it should only take 1 first-round draft pick and something more. Now, if the starting asking price is a first-round draft pick, do you like that? Do you dislike that? I don't mind that at all, but it's what is that something more? Is that a first-round pick and then 4 other picks? That also doesn't seem to be the case. This GM also states here a first-round pick and maybe a second-round pick, a first-round pick and 2 third-round draft picks. Maybe it's a first-round pick and a player. There doesn't seem to be this you have to bring this haul that we can't say no to. This is more about, can you give us a first-round pick? Can you give us something else? This is not going to break whoever acquires him. It's essentially there to help the Cleveland Browns. They're desperate. Myles Garrett can very easily force the Cleveland Browns' hand and say, look, I want to get traded, and until I am, I'm not playing for you. And if that's the case, they can find him for sure, but Garrett never has to show up. Now, you can get into, does that hurt him and the team or whatever, but he really could force their hand. And for the Browns, number 2 overall pick this year, really bad season last year. All signs are pointing to them drafting a quarterback this year. Will they? Time will tell. But with this news, their focus now shifts to maybe drafting Abdul Carter from Penn State at number 2 overall. So the Browns are kind of in flux. They really don't have a direction they're going in. They want to get off of Deshaun Watson's contract. They don't really want to bring back Jameis Winston. They're hoping that we can have this star defensive player in the building still to help us bridge the gap from rebuild to contention. However, Garrett's saying, no, get me out of there, which is why I think the asking price will be lower than the initial, 3 first-round draft pick thoughts many of us had. And the great thing about this is that San Francisco is completely equipped to trade for him. San Francisco this year has 10 draft picks, and all the expectations, if you believe Tim Kawakami, of they're going to go defense at 11, barring there being a top tackle at that position. However, if you're already going to go defense and you have 10 draft picks ready to go in 2025, why not just trade for Myles Garrett? Give him a first-round draft pick, number 11 overall, and then give him those 2 third-round draft picks. Give him a second-round pick. You are risking at 11, there is no bona fide stars in the NFL draft. There's players you hope can be great. There's players you hope can be Myles Garrett. Forget that. Go get Myles Garrett. You don't have to wonder, could this guy become the next Myles Garrett? When Myles Garrett's on the open market, ready to be traded for this offseason. I also believe that, with Robert Saleh back in the building, their focus is shifting towards defense first. How do you get back to trench warfare? And if that's the case, and you see that, and really you can argue, Myles Garrett's better than Nick Bosa. You're getting potentially a defensive edge better than Nick Bosa. Why would you not make the call? If I was John Lynch, I'd be on the phone right now saying, what do you want? What will it take? No matter how many times the Browns say no, 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 I am redialing them every day, checking in, making sure that it's still the stance they take. And they can say no, and that's fine. But I'm doing everything. I'm moving mountains to hopefully just get an earshot of acquiring Myles Garrett. Because if you give me Bosa and you give me Myles Garrett on the edge, there is no quarterback safe in the NFL. You're giving San Francisco exactly what they've been wanting for years. And I can argue you're giving them a better player than the player they currently have who already has won the Defensive Player of the Year award in Nick Bosa. This is the best, if they can do this, the best edge tandem in football, and arguably the best tandem I've seen, the last decade. Maybe I'm forgetting somebody, but this would be the best defensive end tandem in football the last 15, 20 years. That's how impressive this would be. And yes, there's been great ones beforehand, and obviously you got to win and get things done. But on paper, at least, you are setting yourself up to wreak havoc over the NFL. And walking into 2025, you have a 4th-place schedule. This is setting up if they can get this deal done, which, again, I'd be on the phone 24/7 calling Cleveland. What do you want? Moving money around, saying, how can we fit this guy in our books? Because you do not let a player like Myles Garrett slip through your hands if you're San Francisco. You've been looking for this forever. And out of the blue on a Monday morning, on February 3rd, a week prior to the Super Bowl, he says, look, I want out of here. I would have been on the phone the minute the news came out. As soon as Schefter tweeted it out, boom, I'm on the phones. Hey, what do you want? First round pick, 11, you got it. Third round pick, you got it. Deebo Samuel, you got it. What else do you want? I want to get Myles Garrett in red and gold no matter what. We have some YouTube comments here. Fluffy Ninja says, let's go. Trade. Are we still contenders? Look, you want to talk about are we still contenders? You get Myles Garrett, you become legitimate Super Bowl contenders on paper immediately. Your odds rise up and you hopefully get healthy again. Imagine walking into 2025 with Robert Saleh as your DC again. You now have Trent Williams healthy. Deebo Samuel maybe can rekindle some magic next year. Brock Purdy has a big contract coming on the books this season after his extension. He's locked, ready to go. Christian McCaffrey's healthy again. Isaac Rendo's healthy again. Maybe Jordan Mason comes back. Jawan Jennings off an amazing career season last year. He's back. Ricky Pearsall, the entire offseason program, he's healthy, ready to go. You're setting your offense up for success. Then you add in on defense. Fred Warner's back, Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, and your secondary's locked in Lenore, Green, Mustafa. You are looking at, on paper at least, an anticipated top 2 football team in the NFL. A roster so stacked, they don't have many holes, and if they do have holes on defense, a defensive line group that can erase those struggles they may have. So yes, the Niners should be, if I'm Myles Garrett, the Niners are a team I want to go to more than most. And if I'm San Francisco, I'm saying I got to get Myles Garrett on my team right now before somebody else does. Bobo with a phenomenal comment here says, doesn't matter if we get Myles Garrett, he'll just be another guy KC will hold that tackle to the ground with no calls in the Super Bowl. Well, Bobo, I can't argue there at all. It's a great comment to make, and honestly, it's a pretty true one. Hopefully, if the Chiefs win this year, maybe the NFL will say, look, you got your three-peat, take a year off, and let's make things look a little less rigged, if you will. But you're right. It hasn't mattered how effective and efficient the Niners' defensive end group has been in the Super Bowl. Now, to Casey's credit, they have good tackles. They hold a lot. And Mahomes is still hard to sack in the first place, but there ain't no guarantee Casey's back next year, and I don't think they will. It's like doing it 3 times is almost impossible. Doing it a 4th time in a row, seriously, but you never know in this day and age. But I do agree with you. If you get Myles Garrett and Nick Bosa, but that said, it's a lot easier to. Oh, they're only holding Nick Bosa. Oh, they're holding Chase Young, Samson Ebukam, D Ford. You ain't going to hold Myles Garrett and Nick Bosa. If it happens twice, Myles Garrett's going to go out there swinging his helmet at somebody saying, hey, cut this out. This is rigged. Lori Matthews asks here, do the Browns need a kicker? I will personally fly Jake Moody to Cleveland myself if it meant acquiring Myles Garrett in an instant. I'll give him, honestly, I'll just toss him in there for free. You want a 1st-round pick? Fine. 2 third-round picks? Fine. Can you just take Jake Moody? You don't have to keep him. Can you just take him away from us? We don't want to hear either. Leon Sandcastle says, I'd call and offer the 11th overall pick, 99th overall pick, and 2025 2nd-round pick. Pick 11 is worth a lot. If they're bent on 2 first, I'd rather just draft Nolan, Pierce, or Green. Right, so that's kind of the conundrum you find yourself in. And that's kind of one of the biggest things of does trading for Myles Garrett, offering a massive package for Garrett, jeopardize the future in San Francisco? We've talked long and hard. This team needs rejuvenation to be re-energized. They need some youth on this aging roster. Would trading for Garrett, who is only 29 years old, mind you, but he's 29. He's not 22, 23. He's not going to be here for 5 years guaranteed. Not going to be here for 4 years. He's not going to be this youthful player you find here, and that is cheap for the next half decade. He's a guy who you're saying this is a win-now move, and you hope you can resign, but it's a guy you're banking on maximizing your current window. And to that, I would say you have to. You have to maximize your window. Whether you think San Francisco can do it all next year or not, fine. This roster is built this way for a reason, to believe they can. And so if you're the 49ers, it's very easy to buy into the idea of trading 2 first-round draft picks. I mean, my God, they traded 3 first-round draft picks for Trey Lance or for an unnamed quarterback at the time, and you had no idea who that guy was going to be. You got to believe they're comfortable trading away 2 first-round draft picks for Myles Garrett. I mean, honestly, if they're okay trading away first-round draft picks for essentially a big fat question mark, you're getting a bona fide superstar. I mean, we're talking franchise-altering. Myles Garrett really is worth what a star quarterback is worth, because that's how much he can do for your defense. Now, again, the Browns have been a disaster, mainly because the offense has been so bad, the coaching staff's been terrible, and they've made some pretty bad decisions, a la, Deshaun Watson. That said, you can easily buy into trading away a haul of picks, a haul of unknowns, mind you, for Myles Garrett. But I get your point. You want to keep your picks and you want to implement 9 draft picks that are young, they're youthful, they can be the next stars of tomorrow in San Francisco while helping out today instead of Myles Garrett. I totally get that. You can argue that, would you rather have Garrett or that kind of star defensive tackle on the interior? That's certainly a conversation to have. I think I would still say Myles Garrett. This is, the NBA just saw one of the most craziest trades of all time, Anthony Davis and more for Luka Doncic. This is like getting one of those players. You're getting a star that's usually healthy, is a guaranteed double-digit sack, walking around on your defense. He'd easily take over Leonard Floyd's job. He'd give you this, duo of just, wreaking havoc edge rushers on your defense where it's like, how do you not buy in and make that move? Lord Matthews asks here, does Garrett have any ties to anybody on the current coaching staff or the players? None of them come to mind. I don't think so. Maybe Jordan Elliott, but that's like a third-string defensive tackle. He was in Cleveland 2 years ago. I'm not sure exactly, what that would, if that matters at all. I don't think the staff is relevant in regards to any connections off the top of my head. Maybe there's some random assistant coach where you're like, oh, he was in Cleveland for a year or two, but nobody else really comes to mind. But I'm sure if you're Myles Garrett, who has played San Francisco twice, he's 1-1 against them, but also seen them perennially contending for NFC championships. Garrett, I believe, has only made the playoffs once in his entire career. So there has to be some intrigue of what can I do in San Francisco, amongst other teams as well. But the weather is good, the team is good, the coaching staff is one of the best in football. Garrett saw what Saleh did the past 4 years with the Jets, albeit the team wasn't great, the defense surely was. You can easily, I can see Garrett saying, you know what, I don't want to go to Green Bay where it's cold. Philadelphia, yeah, but they have a lot of young defensive players there. The AFC, there doesn't seem to be, if you're Garrett, your easiest path to the playoffs is the NFC. Now, maybe the Lions come into play, but, you're talking about salary caps and stuff. Really, of the two, I can think of 2 legitimate NFC teams that are the number 2 contenders for him, the top 2 guys. It's San Francisco, and it's the Washington Commanders, who had a phenomenal season. Adam Peters is now there. You have the new coaching staff out there. They had a phenomenal season. There's reasons to buy into them. They have $70, almost $80 million in cap space, I believe. They can fit in Garrett it's no one's business. They need some defensive help. That makes a lot of sense for them. Garrett playing in the AFC North, he'd get out of that tough division to deal with. Honestly, and I'm probably being a homer here, but would you rather play in Washington or would you rather play in San Francisco? I think it'd be easier to buy into playing in San Francisco than Washington, albeit Washington was phenomenal this year. Fluffy Ninja says, do the trade. It's like that kid in Shrek 3, do the roar. He's like, shut up. Joseph Ernberg says, quite the contrary opinion. They should not get Myles Garrett. Well, why? You have to pitch me more on not getting Myles Garrett than trying to acquire Myles Garrett. You are essentially saying, and maybe you're in the group that is talking about, we want those 10 draft picks. You want that number 11th overall pick, whether it's a tackle or a defensive player. You want that youth. That's fine. But you just saying, I don't want a Myles Garrett. You gotta explain to yourself why. That's 31 other teams in the NFL are saying, we want Myles Garrett. Now, many of them can't for money, but I also guarantee you this. There are teams that are going to be on the fringe of salary cap hell, trying to move around money in hopes they can make an offer to acquire Myles Garrett. That just makes the most sense. They'll do that. Teams that are fringe playoff teams, teams that got booted in the first round this year, they're saying, hey, how can we get that guy on our defense? He makes that big of a difference. Leon Sandcastle adds here, if you imagine if they land Myles Garrett, sign Calais Campbell got $2 million last year for the Dolphins and still is one of the most productive defensive tackles in the league. I'm telling you. And that's the thing about this. Like, you can talk about what it will take to get Myles Garrett. And let's say San Francisco and the fans, and we're all saying, look, we're good giving up a first, maybe 2 firsts, or let's say there is a consensus like, look, it takes this. It takes a first-round pick and 2/3 and something else down the road to make this thing happen. The financials of the deal work completely in San Francisco's favor. Yes, would it make things tight? 1,000%. 1,000%. But Brock Purdy, who is scheduled to make $5 million this year because of a bonus he had, you can work that down to like a $1 to $2 million cap hit. You can extend Fred Warner. You can extend George Kittle. You can rework current deals already on the books, and they already have $48 million in cap space. It's not going to crush them because the way Garrett's contract is currently scheduled, again, San Francisco has $48 million on the books. They can extend Warner, extend Kittle, add more money to that current salary cap room they have. But Garrett's under contract for 2 more years, and he's due $50 million. However, any team that acquires Garrett is going to pay him $19.8 in 2025 and pay him $25 million in 2026. But here's the kicker. Like we talked about with Max Crosby's contract, none of it's guaranteed. Not a single penny of Myles Garrett's current contract the next 2 years is guaranteed. Thus, they can acquire Myles Garrett for whatever the price may be, immediately extend him 1 to 4 years because he has void years on his contract. You can erase those void years, extend his contract, lower his cap hits, spread it over time, give him more guaranteed money, and make Myles Garrett a very, very cheap elite edge rusher opposite Nick Bosa. And then by that time, Deebo Samuel's gone. You're not having to pay maybe Trent Williams in a couple of years. Like, you are, if they find this deal, if you believe this deal is the move they have to make, which I think I'm in that grouping currently at least, I haven't been sold as to why they shouldn't make it. The finances work. The only issue is compensation for Cleveland. Like for San Francisco, it's simply just, look, the money works for us. What do you want? That is the sticking point for San Francisco. But outside of that, I mean, really, it works in every which way in the Niners' favor. There is one complication, though, when it comes to finances, because the Cleveland Browns are very stupid, if I'm putting it bluntly. They have not spent their money wisely over the last few years, and they have an albatross of a contract sitting on their books currently. I believe the current cap hit for Deshaun Watson is $127 million right now. Like, if they cut him, they have to pay him $127 million via the dead cap hit. So that's there. Like, they are stuck. They currently have they have $30.1 million in cap space. The Browns do. They are they're under the cap. They have room to maneuver currently, but if they trade Myles Garrett, it is a 36.2 dead cap hit. So they immediately go over the cap in the negative. Now they can trade other people, move contracts around. There was some rumors that they were trying to maybe get out of the Deshaun Watson deal. I'm not sure about that, if that's valid or not. But either way, if Garrett is like, look, I want out and I'm leaving, I'm not playing for you, the Browns are going to have to put themselves in some kind of salary cap hole no matter what. It depends on how they're able to maneuver to get out of it. Now, it could be extending current people, restructuring contracts, but everything makes sense for San Francisco. For the Browns, quite the opposite. They don't want to trade Garrett. They have publicly said that. They knew this was coming, but they are adamant they're not going to trade him. The finances don't favor them in this case, but He can easily say, I don't want to play for you anymore. I don't want to play for you one more time. Joseph Ehrenberg adds to his comment earlier saying, don't get Myles Garrett. Now he says, the Niners are not one player away. They need a lot of players. Okay. I don't disagree with you. I think that for San Francisco, let's just assume the trade package would be 2 first-round draft picks and a third-round pick, whether it's next year or in 2 years. San Francisco would still have 9 picks this season. 9 to 8 picks this year. That'd be from round 2 to round 7. That would include second-round pick. It would include a handful of third-round picks, barring what you trade away for Garrett, a couple of fourth-round picks, 6th and 7th-round draft picks. So they would have 9 to 8 draft picks to go get starting, whether it's a safety or a cornerback or a tackle or a guard. They'd have room on the roster and on their draft books to make 8 to 9 selections this year and still be viable. I would just say this. While San Francisco may not be one player away, that's true. That's fine. It's what you're getting with Garrett that makes the difference. So let's say we're working under the belief they need a bunch of players to lift them up over the top in 2025. Okay, at 11, you take Walter Nolan, you take Mike Green, you take one of these top tackles, Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks, or somebody else in the class you really like, right? There is no guarantee. Any of them are good. Obviously, we'll go over draft content very soon. We'll get into scouting reports and the top 10s and mock drafts very soon. But there ain't no guarantee. No matter of any of the guys you take, and of all the teams, San Francisco should know this. Solomon Thomas, Reuben Foster, Trey Lance, Drake Jackson, Javon Kinlaw. We've seen too many top-of-the-line talents come here and it's not be good. Now, whose fault is that? I have no idea. Scouts, players themselves, injuries, it's everything, right? Whereas Myles Garrett, essentially under contract for 2 years, would be, he's our first-round pick in 2024, or in this case, 2025, and he's our first-round pick in 2026. If you told me my first-round draft pick was almost guaranteed to get me 14 sacks a year, get me over 70 pressures a year, get me near the top of the NFC every single year opposite Nick Bosa barring injury, wouldn't you take it? I get it, they have to have linebackers and offensive linemen, and all that's true. All that is true. But it's talking about any player you pick, first round through 7th round, is a I don't know. Is a might be, is a could be, is a hope will be. Myles Garrett is a we know what he is. The minute he steps on that field, left tackles, no matter if they're the worst guy in the league or the number 1 dude, are shaking in their boots saying, I don't want to face that guy. And you know what it does? It alleviates Nick Bosa, takes away double teams, and it makes San Francisco terrifying. I go back to what the Rams did in 2021. Very different teams, mind you, very different rosters. What's the move they made to take them over the top? It was OBJ, and it was Von Miller. And Von Miller was a massive impact on that team. I'm not saying it's a 1-to-1 in this case, but you've seen too many examples of San Francisco being beat by teams that have gone out there, been aggressive, made the moves, and we've also seen too many teams like the Rams in 2021 make that one pivotal offseason move that lifts them over the top, and San Francisco is like, oh crap, why didn't we do that? And in the same breath, San Francisco has also tried to make that move plenty of times. I believe it was 2018 when the Raiders were still in Oakland, I believe, and they were going to trade Khalil Mack. San Francisco offered like 2 to 3 first-round draft picks. They were involved in the Khalil Mack sweepstakes. Now, again, it's a long time ago, but they have shown this, we got to get our guy. I think this is a gift from heaven falling in their lap, saying, okay, we can get a draft pick here. There really isn't another edge rusher on the market we like, but Myles Garrett's out there. I think it changes everything. I was under the interpretation that, 11th overall pick, it'll be Walter Nolan, it'll be Mike Green, be one of these young drafting prospects. However, it's like, you get Myles Garrett, I don't care who else you draft. I got the best pick in that first round because I simply got Myles Garrett on my team. Now, Papa J says here, we got to go all in on Garrett. If we could get Garrett and Drew Dalman, we'd be set. Garrett would not be like the only move they'd have to make for sure. But again, you would have 8 to 9 draft picks. You still have money to spend, mind you, in free agency. Now, how much is that? I have no idea. But like, if you extend Myles Garrett, which they certainly should if they make the deal, you would still have like $30 million to spend. That's plenty of money to work with. And with where San Francisco is at currently, you don't mind putting yourself or limiting yourself this year, because then you can always make moves later. You can cut guys, you can trade guys. Like, you don't mind going for it all for a 2-year maximizer window and then starting to pivot down the road. And in this deal, you could also trade Deebo Samuel. You can also trade Leonard Floyd. You can trade away Drake Jackson. Like, you can give the Browns a little bit of something back to help your current cap situation as well. Now, again, it gets tricky with Deebo, but Floyd makes sense. Drake Jackson makes sense, albeit not worth much off the injury. But there is ways to make this work to where you're not just getting Garrett and that's it. And you can still have plenty of money to spend in free agency. Rick Diaz says this. He thinks it's a good idea to trade him from the Browns to the Niners. I don't know. That's what I'm asking you. I don't know what they're asking for. Nobody really does. The assumption is it'll be high, but if you believe what Diana Rossini said when talking to an anonymous GM, it's only going to be a first-round pick and something else. It's not going to be 2 first-rounders, not going to be 3 first-rounders. It's going to be, a first-round pick and 2/3, or a first-round pick and a first-round pick, a second-round pick and a player. Like, it's not going to be this massive asking price for Myles Garrett. Rick Diaz also says here, I have not heard anything about the front line that we need to protect our quarterback, Brock Purdy, and we need a lot of help 100%. They talk so much about defense. What about the front line? That's kind of the other side of this, right? Okay, Tim Kawakami says they're going defense first in the first round. Myles Garrett's out there. That's what we're currently talking about. Robert Saleh is also back. Everything is leaning towards defense. You even had today, Diamond Lenoir's out there. Hey, Myles Garrett, what animal are you? We have hyenas. We have bears. What are you? Him out there saying to Myles Garrett on Instagram, let's go win a ring together. So you're already having Lenoir, who is openly recruiting Max Crosby, now openly saying, Myles Garrett, come to San Francisco. I think vibes matter. I think that, you got to protect Brock Purdy. You got to get that left guard situation figured out. You got to figure out who's playing center for you next year, whether it is Jake Brendel, whether it is Drew Dalman or somebody else. You got to figure it out. I also believe San Francisco likes Jake Brendel more than the public does. However, I don't agree with them, but that's the case. You get back Trent Williams healthy at left tackle. There's an improvement there. They like Ben Barch. There's a very, very good chance they walk into next year with the exact same line, minus Aaron Banks, starting this year for them. Trent, Ben Barch, Spencer Burford, Brendel, Pooney, and McKivitz. That's who they like. I think they'll draft somebody, they'll sign somebody. However, there's a very good chance that is who they bring in next year as their starting 5, which would, again, if they're okay doing that, which I wouldn't be, but if they're okay doing that, then go get Myles Garrett if you're going to be complacent on the offensive line. Rick Diaz asks here again, can the Niners afford to pay him? Yes. And that's the thing, is that you ask there at the end what Garrett wants. Garrett has not given the Browns or any insider any information as to or indication that he wants a pay raise. If that's the case, San Francisco can guarantee money that he's currently not getting. Like, it's a big thing that San Francisco can guarantee the contracts he currently has, lower the cap hit, and then say, look, we have Myles Garrett for 2, maybe more years on a cheaper deal. Like, it's a very big deal. Leon Castle says here, for 2 firsts and a third, give me Garrett and Bitonio. Bitonio wants out too. I'd be comfortable with that trade. I get it. I don't know how the money works for Bitonio's contract, so forgive me with that, but I think Bitonio is threatened to retire, so I'm not sure if he would want to relocate, but you never know. I think that Bitonio would certainly be interesting. I also don't know what his value would be on the open market via trade or whatnot. My focus was on Myles Garrett. However, getting Bitonio would be great. But honestly, like, I really do believe they're good with Ben Barch and Burford playing left guard next year. But the draft's in April, so we'll see what they do. Let's see what else we got here. Rob D says, F them picks, man. F them picks. Honestly, like, you don't see, like, this isn't like they're trading for D Ford again. It's not like they're trading for DeAndre Hopkins when he was with Texans and went to the Cardinals. It's not like they're trading for a safety. Like, they're trading for the position they've been looking for. They had the finances to get it done, and they're in a spot that, like, if there was a year to be bad, yes, it's this year for your draft capital's sake, but if there's also a year to be bad because you get high draft capital, it's to go get Myles Garrett. Like I don't care who they pick at 11 if they get Myles Garrett. It's a bona fide home run hitter that'll get you 15, 14 sacks a year, opposite Nick Bosa. Tommy Huxley says Drake Jackson is a bust. Yeah. At least he has been. Had one phenomenal game. He had one half a good season his rookie year. And then his injuries piled up. And the unfortunate part is it really looked like he was going to be like a star, right? You had Trent Williams saying, oh, he looks like an all-pro. He's built like an all-pro. He has the body. He's an athletic freak. There was always going to be some transition for him because USC used him incorrectly, if I may say. He was playing outside linebacker. He was standing up. He was in coverage. He didn't have his hand in the ground as an edge rusher. And so there was going to be a transition period to playing in the NFL. You saw that his first year. He was really good in his first 6 or so games. Hit the wall as a rookie. And then didn't look good the second half of the year. Then comes back the next year, 3 sacks in the first game. Oh my God, here we go. We have this freak. He looks awesome. Then it's bang. Injuries, knee injury, season's done. Then misses the next year too. So he did post a video on Instagram recently that showed himself working out and getting back into shape. So hopefully, whether they trade Drake Jackson or cut Drake Jackson, the sky is somewhat still the limit for a player like Drake Jackson, knowing how athletic he can be. The question is, can you stay healthy? Can you stay consistent? But, second round pick for a reason. You just got to figure it out. And hopefully he can, because if he can, it's another great depth piece to have. And yes, Tommy Brendel is also booty. Very much the case. See what else we have here on the YouTube chat. Nothing much, but honestly, there is no reason for me to say, or the Niners to say, don't get Drake or don't get Myles Garrett, right? He is the perfect player for what they want to do. He is the exact position they've been looking for, and it doesn't come around often. You get to pair one defensive player of the year in his prime to another defensive player of the year in his prime. Myles Garrett's only 29, coming off a 14-sack season. He's a former MVP finalist like Nick Bosa. His contract fits under the books for San Francisco. They can make it cheaper with an extension. None of this does not make sense. All of it makes sense for San Francisco. I get it. You got to pay Brock Purdy and this, that, and the other. You can still do that and get Myles Garrett. You don't want to draft a hope so at number 11. Imagine in the first round, they go cornerback Will Johnson, or they go Mason Graham from Michigan. They go Kenneth Grant from Michigan. Walter Nolan. They go one of these guys are all saying, oh, this guy's great. Cool. I can also get Myles Garrett, who I know will be great. The Niners would be stupid to not at least make an offer. And they're going to do their due diligence on this. I would make an offer right now. Right now. First round pick and this, and that. Players like Myles Garrett do not become available, usually, in your lifetime. This is a generational type of player on the open market. This ain't a safety, ain't a cornerback, he ain't in free agency. You can get this guy on a fixed contract that you can work with, that you can rework. These things don't happen. And the great thing about this is, let's look at their defense as a whole next year. On paper, they're walking in next year. Let's start from the back end first. On paper, Jair Brown, you don't love that, but he was really good in 2023. Maybe he bounces back in 2024. If you trade for Garrett, you still got plenty of picks to find a safety. So let's say it's Jair Brown and Mustafa. You like Mustafa a lot. You can find somebody else at safety if you want to for Brown. Cool. Thumbs up. Great. At cornerback, you love Lenore. You love Renardo Green. They don't plan on paying a high-end corner any money. They're not going to get DJ Reed. They're not going to go out there and pay for it. They're not getting Jair Alexander. They want a $5 million cheap veteran option and maybe a draft pick behind him. They're not going to pay big money for a cornerback. They don't do that when they're already paying Lenore and drafted Renardo Green. Then you go to linebacker. You have Fred Warner. You have D. Winters. You probably bring back Curtis Robinson, who looked really good in preseason. And also, Drake Greenlaw's not getting $10 million a year. You can afford to extend or re-sign Drake Greenlaw. From all indications via Matt Mayoko and others, while Greenlaw may have interest from the Titans or Seattle or the Commanders, he wants to be in San Francisco. Saleh wants him back in San Francisco. Nick Bosa is advocating, and Fred Warner are advocating to resign Drake Greenlaw back this offseason. The odds are he's back for 1 year, probably $6 million with the incentives to make more. That gets done. You got Nick Bosa. You got to fix your interior for sure, but you like Malik Collins a lot. You go get Myles Garrett, and you can figure out the plug and play guys on the interior from there. This on paper, you're like, oh my God, holy hell! This is incredible. This is incredible. And if you rework Garrett's contract, you extend George Kittle, you extend Fred Warner, you pay Brock Purdy. You got picks to go get the offensive line picks. Yes, and I am making it sound way too easy, but this isn't unrealistic is the point. Yes, I'm making it sound like do this and do that, and players will just buy in. Some guys won't. However, it's not like what I'm saying isn't possible. This is all on the table, and a lot of this is the likely scenario for this team minus Myles Garrett. But if you're San Francisco, money, it makes sense. Personnel, it makes sense. Your team wants to compete next year. Myles Garrett wants to compete next year. There is no reason as why San Francisco shouldn't at least make a call, make a really good offer, because you don't get players like Myles Garrett on the market hardly ever. This is a bona fide guaranteed hit. And San Francisco has been looking for bona fide guaranteed hits for a long time at the opposite edge rusher spot for Nick Bosa. And again, as all indications say, they are going to go defensive line in the first round anyways. Unless Campbell or Banks falls or one of these top offensive players falls, they're going to go defensive line. Is Myles Garrett not head and shoulders arguably the best defensive line player in the entire league? You can make the argument now. He's one of the best defensive line players in the NFL. Why would you not trade a first-round pick for that? Why would you not trade 2 first-round picks for that? Why would you not make a massive offer and say, look, the worst they can do is turn it down? So San Francisco, in my opinion, must make an offer. San Francisco, I think, should be one of the favorites to land Myles Garrett over teams like the Packers, Philadelphia, and even in certain circles, over the Commanders, who had a great year last year. I get Adam Peters is there. He's from this front office. He wants to be aggressive too. He was trying to get Brandon Ayuk this past year from San Francisco, but they're a young team. They have some older players, mind you, on that team on defense. They may want to retool like San Francisco is trying to do as well, which could eliminate them from the Myles Garrett sweepstakes. Where San Francisco is like, look, we got like 38-year-old old man Trent Williams back there playing left tackle. He ain't got much time left. We got to win now with them on the team. Hence why we have to go out there and get Myles Garrett. But tell me down below in the YouTube comments, do you think the San Francisco 49ers should trade for Myles Garrett? What would be the trade package you put in place? Is it 1 first-round draft pick? Is it 2 first-round draft picks? Are you including players like Deebo Samuel, Leonard Floyd? Give me a realistic trade package you think San Francisco should offer to the Browns for Myles Garrett. If you also could, follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the X or Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. On SeatGeek.com, use that promo code 49ersaccess, 49 ERSACCESS, and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. And again, click that link down below and get yourself a can of goat fuel to feel like the greatest of all time. The great one right here, I'm sure, loves himself some goat fuel. He says, trade Brock Purdy for Myles Garrett. Not going to happen. That's kind of one that's far out there, but the Browns need a quarterback. However, it would defeat the entire purpose of getting Myles Garrett for trading away Brock Purdy. But you never know in the NFL, brother, albeit this one seems like a far-fetched idea. But I love the enthusiasm. I love the comment. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. They're not getting Aaron Rodgers. Imagine that. They trade Brock Purdy for Myles Garrett, bring Garrett into San Francisco, then go out there and sign a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers. Wow. That would be something. That would be something. But don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Go to sportspyder.com for your team's favorite latest news, podcasts, and articles. And yeah, like, share, subscribe. Leave that 5-star review on the audio podcasting platforms. As always, my name is Sterling Bennett. And until next time, stay faithful.